first start by giving you two things this debate is not. This is not a scientific question.
And as Erica said earlier, which I probably should save for rebuttal, this isn't a scientific question.
In fact, science in principle cannot even answer the question, much less ask it.
But what science is saying is not, there is no supernatural. That's not a declaration of science. But we can investigate the claims of manifesting phenomena within reality, but not supernatural causes or explanations.
That is because the question for tonight is a philosophical question about metaphysics and not science.
Science doesn't say, there's no supernatural realm, stop, you're all stupid. That's not what science says.
As atheist philosopher of science Michael Roos says, science does not ask certain questions, so it is to no surprise that it does not give certain answers.
Science says, we're not able to investigate the supernatural realm if it exists, so we're stuck dealing with the natural world. But the fact that we don't necessarily have a good answer or an answer that appeals to everybody doesn't mean that we should just accept an answer that's coming from philosophical realms and theological realms. It is a scientific question. So, because I don't think that was really clear, if somebody claims that this phenomenon that we observe is caused by something supernatural, science can't investigate the cause until you give us a mechanism by which we can investigate the supernatural.
So appealing to science to answer the question tonight is like appealing to a ruler to measure your weight. It's simply the wrong tool for this assessment.
It's difficult to shock them when they try to claim that this isn't a scientific issue.
So when you look at the world, not just through a scientific lens, because sure, science is great for discovering natural things, but it has absolutely nothing to say with other things such as metaphysics, essence, question, truth, the external world, and so forth.
And what we label as a person, individual experiences, information, interactions, that all of the things that we label as a person, apart from the meat sack that they're in.
No, I disagree. Personhood is not a scientific question. To define a person, you don't look at the physics, because I can lose functioning and still be a person. So again, you're assuming that it's all physical. You're assuming that we define personhood by scientists when this is not a scientific question. You don't ask a scientist a metaphysical question. These are philosophical questions.
I think, and I'm an idiot, so you can feel free to dismiss it, philosophical constructs whose only purpose they serve is to undergird the proposed solutions to mysteries. But philosophy is trying to answer the things that science can't. And in the absence of a scientific answer, they're happy to go with the one they came up with. Which I get, I understand that. I just don't see that it's valid.
I was asking about, again, our foundations are so different. He takes what is called, or at least it seems like, a scientism approach, which is the view that science is the best way to answer anything. But the irony is that to say that science is the best way to answer something is not a scientific thing, that's a philosophical thing. It's not a scientific statement, it's a philosophical statement about the nature of science. So to even say that science is the best way, or to say that we don't need philosophy in these areas, is a philosophical statement about not needing philosophy.
My position is science is demonstrably the best way to answer anything that can be answered.
See, earlier you talked about science answering the question, but that scientism is a well-refuted view of knowledge. I mean, there's a lot of things science can't prove. There's a lot of things science assumes. You can't prove scientifically the existence of truth, because first of all, science presupposes truth before using it.
Science doesn't make proclamations about truth. It doesn't presuppose truth. Science doesn't tell you what's true.
Right, because it's not a scientific question. That's a philosophical
Correct.
question about epistemology. That's exactly my point.
And maybe, philosophically speaking, my position is science is demonstrably the best way to answer anything that can be answered. Science doesn't make proclamations about truth. It doesn't presuppose truth. Science doesn't tell you what's true.
I say exactly. You're proving my point.
Making a claim that what?
Science doesn't give us absolute capital T
That's
truth.
not just me making that claim. That's the facts about science.
Okay, again, that's my point. This is not a scientific question. You can't use science to answer metaphysical questions.
Sure.
I don't use a ruler to measure my weight. That's just a category fallacy.
I agree with you that it's the wrong tool.
It's
It is a scientific question.
So appealing to science to answer the question tonight is like appealing to a ruler to measure your weight. It's simply the wrong tool for this assessment. That's my point. This is not a scientific question. You can't use science to answer metaphysical questions.
Sure.
I don't use a ruler to measure my weight. That's just a category fallacy.
I agree with you that it's the wrong tool. The problem is that nobody's given us the right tool.
That is because the question for tonight is a philosophical question about metaphysics and not science. So these things are impossible to be explained scientifically. And again, I want to reiterate, it's not that I'm saying science can't answer the question because we're not advanced yet. I'm saying it's literally like science can't determine whether the color blue has weight because it is metaphysically impossible for the color blue to have weight. These are simply category fallacies.
Whether or not the color blue has weight is a matter of definition, just like there's no married bachelors. It's not a scientific question, it's a question of reason. My position is science is demonstrably the best way that best way to answer anything that can be answered. It's not a scientific question, it's a question of reason. It's founded on the foundations of reason: identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. Which I take as a presupposition out of practicality. When it comes to the soul, say, oh, there is no soul.